All right, everyone. Venezuela is now predicted to hit 1,000,000% inflation. I can't remember what the actual number is now. But essentially, even the legacy media now, they used to talk about Maduro and Chavez, and they said, well, Venezuelan socialism is the model for the world. We need more of that here. And they literally said that. There are old archive Salon articles from like half a decade ago where they're like, yeah, Bolivar and socialism for the win. Venezuela is skyrocketing. This is exactly what we need to do in the US and elsewhere. And like the Swedish model's good, but you know, that's Europe, so it's evil. So we're going to use the Venezuelan model. We need wealth redistribution. We need to nationalize industry. We need government to like help us because it's benevolent. They used to say that. They're not saying it anymore. Hyperinflation is eventually going to destroy Maduro's regime. Eventually, Venezuela's economy will be so absolutely broke that not only will they not be able to make their debt payments, they already defaulted with the Chinese. Big mistake, because even China now won't prop them up. Europe had to step in and give Maduro a bunch of free money, a bunch of free shit to prop up his redistributionism. They shouldn't do that. We should be lobbying the Europeans to sanction them as well, increasingly. Shutter the Venezuelan economy entirely. Force Maduro out. The world can force him out within a month. You don't have to raise up arms. You don't have to invade. You don't have to do anything like that. You just have to shut them out of the world economy. Make it clear Maduro is no longer considered a legitimate sovereign world leader. His people don't want him there. They're going to replace him with some other socialist and it won't really improve things. But as long as Maduro goes away, maybe the rest of the world can help Venezuela properly restructure things. That's what should be done. At this point, there's really not much of a choice, though, because once their currency continues to hyperinflate, eventually a wheelbarrow full of cash won't buy you a potato chip. This has already happened. When you say 1,000,000% inflation, people are like, well, how can that even happen? It's happened before. Like the latter-day Yugoslavs had the same problem. I've got, I think, what? A 100 million whatever currency they were using note from like latter-day Yugoslavia from their hyperinflation period. What happens is they just change the money. They keep adding zeros. More and more denominations are made, higher and higher. Maduro has actually optioned doing the opposite and eliminating the higher currencies in order to like try to force inflation back down. It's like, well, we've got a certain amount of currency. This is what it's worth. The thing is, though, the economy is shrinking. One of the few economies on earth that's not actually growing. It always seems to be a socialist nation. You look across to Nicaragua, there's violence beginning to spread there. They're basically a sub-civil war situation as Ortega wears out his welcome. The clergy's now against him. It could be next week that he ends up getting a bullet through his head or something. It's happening in Venezuela. You've got this problem in any country that engages in that kind of socialism. It's like the Nordic model. You've got a market economy propping up the actual socialist side of it. That's why they do well. You need to have an actual privatized economy to do that. China uses that method. China sort of fits in there in the same essence. Yeah, there's a lot of centrally planned works and infrastructure that goes on, but there's also a very, very hyper-deregulated component that is totally capitalistic within China. Certain markets and elements of all markets are totally capitalistic there. I mean, more than any laissez-faire we have in the United States. It's basically the only government regulation is make sure that you pay off the local official so you don't get your knees broken backwards. That's basically the only regulation that exists. Oh, environmental protections, what are those? Says China, hey, at some point we're going to force you to plant a bunch of trees, but until then, go ahead and pollute. Worker protections, we got a 14-hour work week. That's acceptable enough safety standards for us. You got to wear a hard hat when you're in the asbestos mine. That's basically what the safety regulations are. Can be very brutal, but it's economically very effective. By the way, we're beginning to outcompete China here with our GDP growth. We were stuck below 2% growth for so long that it climbs above 4% and everyone's awestruck. Everyone's astonished. And it looks like we'll be up more than 3% year over year. That's pretty damn good. It's higher than it has been in a long time. They said that if the marker of the GDP growth for this last quarter had been like 1/10 of a point higher, it would have been the highest since 2005, from before the recession began. As it is, it's the best since the middle of 2014. That's also not half bad. But no, Venezuela, meanwhile, they're expected to lose like, what, 1.5 billion or some insane number off their GDP this year. You've got a growing population, technically, although a lot of them are fleeing the country. The economy is shrinking. It's gotten to the point where the Venezuelan economy is collapsing specifically because of one sad thing. Because the currency is so shitty, because there's no food available, because basic medical goods are no longer available, and because there's continuous violence and even piracy in some of these oil wells, they've stopped pumping the oil. Even though the oil prices went up a little bit there, it's like, OPEC basically throttling things, and they may or may not continue. Venezuela's oil, they're not even pumping it out of the ground. What are you going to do with it? You pump the oil out, you're not getting much in return, you work a 10-hour day, and you get a bowl of rice. Well, what are your kids going to eat? You're going to give the rice to them, I hope, or maybe eat your kids. You already ate the dog. You probably already started in on the paint chips on the side of your fucking favela, so you're fucked basically. And the thing is, I feel sorry for the Venezuelans for having to deal with this. There is no legitimate reason why a country that had that much oil to exploit in order to diversify their economy and rapidly industrialize and develop shouldn't have done so. Instead, Hugo Chavez, the main problem, decided to buy people dishwashers and microwaves. That's really good for quality of life. You built them commie blocks, you gave them nice beds, here's a laptop. Now you don't have the electricity to run these things. Some of these people don't even have sewage hooked up in their commie block homes. This is the problem of central planning more than socialism. As long as you have a market economy to prop the socialism up and you deregulate a lot of stuff, it can work, Sweden style. It's still a high-tax, hellhole society where the government acts with, basically an autocratic fashion, but it's better than the kind of socialism you see in Venezuela. It doesn't hurt if your economy is somewhat diverse. Sweden isn't just oil, although it has a hefty fuel sector, in Norway or something. You've also got tourism, Viking music, things like that. Black metal. Black metal exports up 10% this year. Woohoo, lots of money. Now, Venezuela's fucked. Unfortunately, until oil prices rise significantly, there's no way to even make the debt payments. And even then, let's say they rose. It'd take them years to get back to the point where they could invest any of that money in diversifying other aspects of the economy so that in the future, if the oil price collapses, you don't have that problem. And the problem is always this. You have a cash crop. The tendency of the central planners will always be to fixate on it and use it to give people welfare because it increases their approval and it justifies their high pay. That's ultimately what it's about. It's human nature. It's corruption. In a free market, you don't have that. Different people compete to fill that niche. They will tend to be more effective and more efficient. It's just the way that things work. Venezuela is not a market economy in any way, shape, or form. There is no element of capitalism there. The government's able to nationalize anything at a whim. You don't have the means of production being owned by anyone at that point other than the government. If the government can come in and say, your farm is mine now, this business, foreign or domestic, that's ours now, we're nationalizing it, bye-bye, person who actually built it, you don't have capitalism. Some socialists have been trying to say, well, there's elements of capitalism in Venezuela. Funny, you didn't say that when things were going well there. You said, no, it's pure socialism, real socialism. All of a sudden it starts to collapse and go south. Now it's not. No, now it's capitalism again. Funny. That's about all. Peace out.